She said it so quiet the wind almost carried it off before it reached me. 3 words. 4, if you count the one at the end. I wish you were mine. And I was down on one knee in the dry grass, fixing a split fence rail, hammer in my hand and dust on my shirt, and I looked up at her. Clara Hayes, wife of a man who barely deserved that name, and I said the only true thing I'd said in a long time. Me too. Neither of us moved. The prairie stretched out behind her, gold and endless under an afternoon sky so blue it hurt. A hawk turned lazy circles overhead, and somewhere behind us, a horse stamped in its stall. We just looked at each other, the way 2 people look when they finally stopped pretending. That was the moment everything changed. And I'm not sure a single day has passed since that I haven't thought about it. I'd ridden into the Callaway Valley on a Wednesday in late September, looking for nothing more than a few days of work and maybe a decent meal. My name is Caleb Merritt, and at 31, I was what men in that part of Kansas called a drifter. Not in the criminal sense, just a man without roots, without land, without a reason to stay anywhere long enough to watch the seasons change. I'd worked cattle drives, helped build a rail station outside of Dodge, spent a winter trapping beaver up in Colorado, before the loneliness near broke me. I knew how to work. I knew how to keep my head down. What I didn't know was how to stop moving. And I've been carrying that particular ailment for going on 8 years. The Hayes homestead sat about 4 miles off the main trail, down a rutted wagon road lined with cottonwoods that had already started turning yellow. The house was well built, 2 stories, white painted, with a good porch and a proper stone chimney. The barn was solid. The fields had been worked recently, though not as recently as they should have been for this time of year. A woman was hanging laundry when I rode up, and she didn't flinch at the sight of a stranger. Just turned and watched me come with calm, dark eyes that took in everything all at once. She was tall for a woman, with dark brown hair pinned up under a wide-brimmed work hat, and a face that struck you as beautiful, not in a soft way, but in a way that suggested she'd been through things and come out the other side still standing. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, hands that had done real work. She wore a simple blue dress with an apron over it, and she dried those hands on the apron before she said anything. "Help you," she said. Not unfriendly, just direct. I touched the brim of my hat. "Name's Caleb Merritt, man. I was wondering if you might have any work that needed doing. I'm handy with fences, general repairs, anything around a ranch. I don't ask for much, fair wage and a place to sleep." She considered me the way a woman considers a purchase she isn't sure she can afford. Then she looked past me at the fence line along the east field, where 3 rails had come loose and were leaning at bad angles. "My husband's away," she said. "He's been in Wichita for 3 weeks on business." A pause. "He's usually back by now." I didn't ask any questions about that. Wasn't my place. "The east fence needs work," she said. "And there's a wagon wheel that's cracked and needs replacing if I'm going to get the harvest in before the rains come. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am." "I'll pay you $2 a day and supper. There's a bunk in the barn." "That's more than fair," I said. She looked at me one more time, that careful, measuring look, and then she nodded. "I'm Clara Hayes," she said. "Supper's at 6. Don't be late." I wasn't late. If you're enjoying this story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It means the world to us. And let us know, what city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and we'll leave you a little heart. Now, back to Caleb and Clara. Those first 2 days I worked from sunup to well past 4 in the afternoon, and I barely spoke 20 words to Clara Hayes that weren't about the fence or the wheel or the condition of the barn roof,
which I noticed was starting to bow in on the south side. She brought water out to me around midday both days, just set it on the fence post without a word, and went back to whatever she was doing. And at supper, she was polite but careful, the way a woman is careful when she's alone on a property and isn't entirely sure yet what kind of man she's invited in. I respected that. I kept my eyes on my food and my conversation short, and I slept in the barn and didn't make any noise at night. I'd been in enough homesteads to know that a woman alone is already carrying more weight than she should have to, and the last thing she needed was a drifter making her feel uncertain in her own house. It was on the third day that things shifted, not because of anything dramatic, just because of the fence. I was working on the east line, the same stretch she'd mentioned the first day, and the rail I'd been trying to fit kept coming loose because the post itself had rotted at the base. I'd dug it out and was setting a new one when I heard her coming across the field toward me. She was carrying a basket with some tools in it that I'd left back at the barn, and she set it down nearby and stood there watching me work for a moment. "That post was like that when we moved here," she said. 3 years ago. Robert kept saying he'd fix it. Robert. That was the husband's name. I filed it away. "It's an easy fix if you catch it in time," I said. "Harder once the rot sets in deep." "Is it bad?" "Not terrible. I'll have it solid by end of day." She crouched down and looked at the old post I'd pulled out, the black rot eating through the base of it. "He was supposed to be back 2 weeks ago," she said. She wasn't talking to me exactly, just talking. I didn't say anything.
"This happens sometimes," she said. "He goes to town for supplies and then he—" She stopped, stood back up, brushed the dirt off her hands. "I'm sorry, you don't need to hear that." "I don't mind listening," I said. She looked at me then. Really looked at me for the first time, I think. Not assessing whether I was a threat or measuring whether I could do the work, but just looking at me the way a person looks at another person. And I looked back. Her eyes were dark brown, nearly black, and there was something in them that I recognized because I'd seen it in the mirror before. A kind of tiredness that had nothing to do with sleep. "You're not from around here," she said. "No, ma'am. I'm from a lot of places." "Where's home?" "Wherever I set my hat down, I reckon." She almost smiled at that. Almost. "That must be lonely," she said. "Sometimes," I said. "Other times, it suits just fine." She nodded slowly, then picked up the basket and turned back toward the house. She stopped after a few steps and said, without turning around, "I'll make something warm for supper tonight. It's going to get cold." She was right about the cold. By evening, a north wind had come down off the plains, and the temperature had dropped 20 degrees. I ate at her kitchen table, a real meal, beef stew with biscuits. And for the first time, she sat down across from me instead of hovering near the stove, and we talked. Not about anything important. About the weather, about the state of the roads, about a bad winter she'd heard was coming. But we talked, and something eased in the room that had been pulled tight. By the time I walked back out to the barn that night, I was already in trouble, though I didn't admit it to myself. 4 more days passed. I fixed the east fence. I replaced the wagon wheel. I relaid 3 rotting boards on the barn floor, patched a section of the south roof, cleared a blocked drainage ditch behind the house.
Clara paid me exactly what she'd promised and asked me each evening if I'd be staying another day. I said yes each time, and neither of us remarked on how that was changing from a hired hand arrangement into something less easily defined. On the 7th day, Robert Hayes came home. I heard the wagon coming up the road before I saw it, and I was up on the barn roof when he turned in at the gate. A broad, heavy-set man in his mid-40s, sun-darkened, with a big hat and a thick mustache. He drove the wagon in hard, didn't look up at me, just climbed down and walked straight into the house. I heard the door shut. I came down off the roof and went to work on the drainage ditch again, keeping busy, keeping quiet. I didn't hear what was said in that house, but I heard the tone of it, even through the walls. The low, hard rumble of his voice, the long silences. Clara didn't raise her voice once. That told me more than anything she could have said. Robert Hayes came out about an hour later and looked at the fence line and the barn roof and the wagon with its new wheel. And then he came over to where I was working and looked me up and down. "You the hand my wife hired?" he said. "Yes, sir. Caleb Merritt." He looked at the work I'd done. "How much has she paid you?" $2 a day. We're square through today." He grunted, pulled his hat off and ran a hand through his thinning hair. Up close he looked tired, but the tired of a man who's been doing things he shouldn't, not the tired of a man who's been working hard. His eyes were red around the edges. He smelled of whiskey, faint but there. "She offer you more days?" he said. "She left it open." He looked at me again. "I'm back now," he said. It wasn't hostile exactly, just a statement, a closing of a door. "Understood," I said. He went back inside and that was that. I should have ridden out the next morning, packed my gear, taken my pay, and been on the road before breakfast. That was the sensible thing, the right thing. Clara had a husband, and whatever that marriage was or wasn't, it wasn't my business, and it wasn't my place to make it my business. I saddled my horse at first light, and then Clara came out of the house. She was wearing her work clothes again and carrying a bucket toward the well, and when she saw me standing there with my horse saddled, she stopped. Just for a second. Something crossed her face that she put away quickly, but not quickly enough. "You're leaving," she said, not a question. "Reckon it's time," I said. She nodded, set the bucket down, came over to where I stood and held out her hand. A handshake, the way a woman pays off a debt she's satisfied with. I shook it. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. The work was good." "Yes, ma'am." She held my hand a beat longer than necessary, or maybe I held hers. I'm not sure even now. Then she let go and picked up her bucket and walked to the well, and I put my foot in the stirrup. But I didn't ride. I just stood there with one foot up and my hands on the saddle horn, staring at the prairie like it was going to tell me something useful. I don't know what I was waiting for. Maybe I was waiting for her to say something. Maybe I was waiting for myself to make a decision that my gut had already made without consulting the more reasonable parts of me. I put my foot back down. "Ma'am," I said, "your north fence post near the cottonwoods is loose. I noticed it yesterday but didn't get to it. It'll only take an hour to fix." She turned from the well and looked at me for a long moment. "All right," she said quietly. "Fix the fence." That was the day it happened. The day she said what she said, and I said what I said. Robert Hayes had gone into town early that morning, some business with the grain merchant, Clara had said, though her voice when she said it carried no conviction. I worked my way along the north fence line toward the cottonwoods, and she came out around mid-morning to check on the chickens and ended up walking the fence with me, the way people sometimes do when they want company but don't want to say so. We'd been quiet for a long time. It was a good quiet, not an uncomfortable one, the kind you can only have with someone when words have stopped being necessary. The cottonwoods were bright yellow now against the sky, and the wind moved through them in a low, steady sound. I crouched down to examine a post, and she stood above me, and I could feel her looking at me the way you can feel a fire in a dark room,
even before you see it. "Caleb," she said. I looked up, and she said it. "I wish you were mine." The world didn't stop. The wind kept moving. The cottonwoods kept turning in it. But something in me went very still, the way things go still when you've been waiting for something without knowing you were waiting. I held her gaze, and I told her the truth. Me too. Neither of us moved for a long time. She was the one who looked away first. Not out of shame, I don't think. More like a woman who has just said something true and is now reckoning with what truth costs. She looked out across the prairie, at the wide, flat expanse of it, and her jaw was set tight. "He's not a bad man," she said, and then, quieter, "but he's not you." I stood up slowly. "Clara, don't," she said. "Don't tell me it's not possible. I know what's possible and what isn't. I live with what isn't every day." She pressed her lips together. I just needed to say it once, out loud, to someone. I wanted to reach out and take her hand. I didn't. "You deserve better than what you've got," I said. She turned and looked at me then, and there was a fierce, controlled ache in her eyes that was one of the most honest things I've ever seen on a human face. "Maybe," she said, "but deserving and having are two different things out here." She picked up the wire I'd set down and handed it to me. "Fix the fence,
"Caleb," she said, and her voice was steady, and I admired her for that more than I can rightly say. "Before this story comes to its end, I want to ask you something. If you're watching from somewhere far away and this story found you on a quiet evening, let us know. What city are you watching from? Leave it in the comments. We'll put a heart on every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a mighty fine time. We tell stories like this every week." I stayed 3 more days. Not because there was work left. The fences were fixed, the wheel was sound, the roof was patched, and everything on the Hayes homestead that had been broken was now as good as I could make it. I stayed because I am a man who has spent most of his adult life running from the possibility of belonging somewhere. And for 3 days on that farm on the Kansas prairie, I let myself stop running, just to know what it felt like. Robert Hayes was not a violent man, but he was a careless one. Careless with what he had. Careless with the woman who kept his home and worked his land, and waited for him when he disappeared for weeks without a word. He wasn't cruel. He was just absent, in the way some men are absent even when they're standing right in front of you. He looked through Clara more often than at her. He talked about the farm like it was an investment, not a life. He thanked her for the meals, the way a man thanks a cook at a boarding house. I watched all of this and said nothing, because it wasn't mine to say. Clara and I were never alone again after that day at the North Fence. Not really alone. There was always the possibility of Robert appearing around a corner, or a reason she had to go back inside, or work that needed doing that kept the practical distance between us where it needed to be. We talked at supper sometimes, all 3 of us, and those meals were their own particular kind of difficulty. The 2 of us across a table from a man who had no idea what had passed between us, and us having to sit in that and be decent about it. On my last evening there, I was in the barn getting my gear together, and Clara came in. Just appeared in the doorway with the lantern, the way women appear in doorways in the night sometimes. And for a moment, neither of us spoke. "You're really going tomorrow?" she said. "Yes." She came a few steps in and held the lantern up a little, and in its light, her face was all gold and shadow. "Where will you go?" "West, maybe. Colorado. I spent time up there once." I paused. "It's good country." "Is there nothing that holds you anywhere?" I looked at her. "There are things that hold me," I said. Sometimes the holding is the problem, not the cure. She understood that. I could see it in the way her eyes changed. "I'll be all right," she said. Not asking for reassurance, just saying it, like a woman reminding herself. "I know you will," I said. "You were all right before I got here." "I was managing," she said. There was a difference in her voice between those two things. "That's not the same." I set down the saddlebag I'd been packing and stood there, and for one long moment I wanted to say everything that was true. That she was the kind of woman a man should build a life with. That this farm deserved someone who saw it as more than a ledger entry. That Robert Hayes had been handed a treasure and was trading it away a piece at a time for whiskey trips to Wichita and God knows what else. I wanted to say that in 8 years of drifting, I had never stood in a woman's barn and felt the weight of staying the way I felt it then. I didn't say any of it. Not because it wasn't true, because it was too true, and saying it would have made leaving harder, and leaving was the thing I had to do. "Clara," I said. She shook her head slightly. "Don't," she said again, but gentler this time. So I didn't. She set the lantern on the hay bale nearest the door and turned to go. Then she stopped, and without turning around, she said, "I'll think about this sometimes. Is that all right?" "It's more than all right," I said. She nodded once and went back to the house, and I stood in the lantern light for a good long while before I could make myself go back to packing. I rode out before sunrise. The prairie was grey and cold, and the stars were still out. That particular hour when night hasn't quite given up its claim on the sky. My horse's breath came in white puffs, and the grass was stiff with frost, and somewhere in the distance a coyote was singing to itself. I didn't look back at the house. I'd learned a long time ago that looking back was a way of making a wound worse. But I thought about her. Lord, I thought about her. I thought about the way she'd handed me the wire at the fence. Practical, steady, choosing the hard thing without flinching. I thought about the look on her face that first evening at supper, when she'd finally sat down across from me, and the way the tension in her shoulders had eased just a little, like a woman who'd been holding something up for a long time, and finally set it down for a minute. I thought about her voice when she said, "I wish you were mine." Not breathless, not theatrical, just honest. Just a woman telling the truth. I've met a lot of people in my years of moving. You meet people easily when you're always going somewhere new. They're curious about the stranger, and the stranger's curious about them. And there's a kind of freedom in the knowing that you'll probably never see each other again. It makes people say things they wouldn't say to a neighbor. It makes them more themselves sometimes, because there's no history to maintain and no future to protect. But Clara Hayes wasn't performing anything. She was just herself, all the way through, even when herself was inconvenient and complicated and married to the wrong man. That kind of steadiness is rarer than people think. I rode most of the day, crossing into the higher ground where the grass was shorter and the sky felt bigger. And by late afternoon I could see the blue line of the hills in the west. I made camp by a creek that was running low, and I ate cold biscuits I'd brought, and listened to the water and thought about Colorado. I'd been in Colorado before, like I told her. The mountains out there do something to a man who's been too long on flat land. They make you feel small in a way that's actually a relief. Like all the big feelings you've been carrying suddenly have somewhere to fit. I liked that. I'd liked it the winter I spent there trapping, even through the cold and the loneliness. I reckoned I'd go back. 3 weeks later, I was in a small town called Harrow, in the eastern foothills, picking up a week's work helping a rancher put up a new fence line before the winter set in hard. It was work I knew, and I was glad to be moving again, glad to have something to do with my hands. On the second day, a rider came through heading east, and we passed a few words at the water trough. He'd come from Callaway Valley, he said. Knew the Hayes place. I kept my voice even. How are things over that way? The rider squinted. Heard Robert Hayes left, he said. For good, sounds like. Word is he's been running up debts in Wichita, gambling mostly. Came back a few weeks back, had some kind of falling out, and lit out again. He shrugged. Left the wife with the farm. I didn't say anything. The rider shook his head. She's a tough one, they say. Won't take charity. Folks from the next ranch offered to help with the harvest, and she let 'em. But she's not asking for anything beyond that. He looked west. Reckon she'll be all right. Place is in good shape. Someone worked on it recent. That right? I said. He tipped his hat and rode on. I went back to my post hole digging. I dug for the better part of an hour,
And the rancher who'd hired me came out around midday and looked at the work I'd done and nodded approvingly. And I drank my water and looked out at the foothills and tried to think straight. She was alone now. Truly alone, not just temporarily. The farm was hers to deal with, the harvest, the winter coming in, all of it. And that fence I'd fixed, the east line, the north line, that was holding. I'd made sure of it. I told myself that was enough. I told myself that a lot over the following days. I left Harrow on a Thursday. Not east, not west toward the mountains like I'd planned. I rode south, then swung back east, and I took the long route, and I told myself I was doing it for the roads, which were supposed to be better on this route. And I told myself that right up until the moment the cottonwoods came into sight, still holding a few yellow leaves even this late in the season, and I saw the Hayes homestead below me in the low afternoon light. I sat on the ridge for a good 10 minutes, smoke from the chimney, chickens moving in the yard, the wagon out front with its new wheel, and Clara in the kitchen garden, crouched down, doing something to the last of the fall vegetables, her hat on and her sleeves rolled up, even in the cold. I rode down. She heard the hoofbeats and stood and turned, and when she saw it was me, she went very still for a moment. Then she pulled her hat off and held it and watched me come. I reined in at the garden fence and got down. Heard Robert left, I said. He left, she said. We looked at each other across the garden fence. I was heading west, I said. Were you? Figured I'd come by first. She looked at me for a long moment, that careful, measuring look I'd seen the very first day, except now it measured something different than threat or competence. Now it measured intention. The south fence is loose again, she said. I almost smiled. That'll need fixing. It will. I tied my horse to the fence post and came through the gate. She turned back to her garden, and I crouched down beside her and started pulling up the last of the turnips, and we worked side by side in the cold afternoon, and neither of us said anything about the future. Because the future was one of those things that didn't need to be talked about just yet. It only needed to be arrived at. That was enough for a start. I've told this story a few times since, to drifters around night fires, to a bartender who asked me once why I'd stopped moving. I don't tell all of it. There are parts that belong only to that farm, and to Clara, and to me. But the part I always tell is the fence. Down on one knee in the dry September grass, hammer in hand, and her voice barely above the wind, I wish you were mine. And my answer, just as quiet, just as true. The hawk still turned,
The horse still stamped. Nothing announced itself. Some things don't shout when they happen. They just settle in, steady and irreversible, like a post finding new ground. I reckon that's how it is with the things that matter most. They hold.